So my name is Erin, and I am the Student Recruitment Officer for UBC Engineering. So thank you all for joining us today. We're going to talk about the co-op program at UBC, including what type of job students can have, how the co-op works, but feel free to comment with any questions you have about co-op so we can answer them. Now we are going to try and stick to questions directly related to the co-op program. So please make sure that those are the questions that you're asking. If you have other questions and you do want to ask those, we will try and get to them at the end of the session, but I can't guarantee that. A great place to ask your questions, though, is on the Facebook page where you got the link to this program from. So there are current students on that Facebook page where you can ask any questions that you might have about what it's like to be a student at UBC Engineering. So feel free to post your other questions if we don't get them today on that page, and either myself or other current students can help answer them. So to introduce some of the students I have with me here today, we have Cheyenne, Kyra, and Anwar, and they're all in the co-op program. They have a lot of experience with co-op themselves. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves now, and we'll start with Cheyenne.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. So my name is Cheyenne. I'm in my last year of chemical and biological engineering at UBC, and I've also completed 5 co-op work terms with the co-op office. These work terms range from I've done research, I've been in the food and beverage industry, and also the mining industry, so a large range.
Awesome. And Kyra, we'll go to you next.
Hey everyone, I'm Kyra. I'm a civil engineering student in my final year at UBC Vancouver, and I'm also one of the engineering co-op peer advisors for this year. I've completed a total of 5 work terms in the UBC co-op program, and my focus is specifically oriented towards development and infrastructure based on co-op experience with the City of Richmond and a civil consulting company called Binney.
Awesome, thank you so much. And Anwar, on to you.
Hey everyone, my name is Anwar Danani. I am also one of the co-op peer advisors. I have also completed 5 work terms in a variety of different industries, including aerospace, software, as well as an art company. I've worked in both small and large companies, and really I'm looking forward to sharing my experience.
Excellent. So we have some students with some really extensive experience in co-op here with us today. So feel free to start asking questions. I have a few questions to get us started off with today. And I want to start with introducing the co-op program a little bit. So the UBC co-op program really enhances students' education with paid, relevant technical work experience, and it launches your engineering career. So as part of the program, you can gain up to 20 months of paid work experience as part of this program, which will be counted as approximately 1 year of work credit towards your engineer in training status. So when students graduate from an engineering program, they're an EIT or an engineer in training for a few years before they can be what's called a professional engineer. And you need to gain work experience for part of that, and this co-op program can count towards some of that work experience. And the co-op program is also an optional program. You do need to apply to it. Usually most students will apply at the start of their 2nd year. And now we're going to move on to a little bit more about Cheyenne, Kyra, and Anwar's experience. So that's kind of the real basics of the program. If you have more questions, though, feel free to post them in the Everyone chat and we will answer those. So to start off with, Kyra, so if you get accepted into the co-op program, does that mean that you get a guaranteed job?
Yeah. So as someone who's gone through the program and also as a co-op peer advisor, I think one of the biggest misconceptions students have is that being in the program automatically guarantees you a job. However, being part of the program actually doesn't automatically guarantee you a position. Just like the real job market, students are expected to go out there and search for positions and compete with their peers or even students from other institutions for jobs in the real industry. So what the co-op program does is provide students with support and resources that will help them obtain those jobs. So whether it's coming up with job search strategies, providing application reviews, co-op networking events, or various workshops, the co-op program helps students navigate the engineering job market. And additionally, the co-op program works closely with employers in the different engineering disciplines to provide students with positions on a job board called PD Portal, where they can find relevant positions for their co-op program. So although being in the co-op program doesn't guarantee you a job, you do get the support and resources that you need to help you be successful in getting those positions.
Awesome, thank you. So Cheyenne, I'm going to pose two questions to you. So Elizabeth just asked, what is the application process into the co-op program like, which I think is a great question. Can you answer that? And then also let us know kind of once you get into the co-op program, what is the actual process of finding a job like?
Yeah, for sure. So most of our students apply in their second year. They'll apply in September of their second year. And the actual initial application, you submit your grades from first year. And so these, like they only really, you have to hit a threshold. So you have to, I think it's 60%, 63%, maybe it's 65, it's something like that. So once they see that you've hit that threshold, they don't look at your grades again. So next you kind of write up like a personal profile like you did for UBC, but it's a lot less intense. Like it's a couple, I think it's 3 or 4 short answer questions kind of thing. And so they'll read that, and then you'll also submit your resume and they'll look through that. So they're kind of like this depends on the year, depends on the program for sure. So some years like everybody who applies in that discipline might get in. Some years they might have like too many people applying. So it's not super competitive, but it's a bit of a process. And then from there, sorry, what was the second question?
So once you're in the co-op program, what is the process of finding a job like?
Okay, so once you're actually accepted into the program, there's a couple workshops that you'll go through. So this is kind of like how to make like an effective cover letter, how to make an effective resume, job search. Offers a lot of workshops to help you succeed, like Kyrie was saying. And so from there, you'll start in January after you applied in the September, and you'll just have access to all these jobs on the portal, and you'll just apply to the ones that you're interested in. And so it's like a normal, if you're looking for jobs, you can apply through the portal, but you can also apply through Google or online type of thing. So it's just like your normal job search. The PD portal just brings in a lot of these, like it's specific to co-op programs. So it's a very good resource to have.
Awesome, thank you. And just to elaborate on what Cheyenne was saying, last year the stats were that about 70% of students who applied to the co-op program were accepted into the program, just to give you an idea. But from what I've heard, the co-op program is really looking for students that meet that minimum grade requirement, but that also have great communication skills and show that they're professional students. So those are kind of the real things that co-op is looking for as well. All right, so we have a question from Ishan. What kind of companies nationally and internationally hire from UBC? Can engineers expect companies like Apple, Google, etc.? So Anwar, I know that you've worked both in the US and other places. So do you want to elaborate a little bit on some of the places where you've worked or where you know of other people that they've worked?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a very common question we get a lot of students when they enter the co-op program. They're wondering, is it just going to be Vancouver or could I work internationally? Especially going down to America is very popular. And I can say that the co-op program does an excellent job with bringing jobs all around the world. I've known people who have worked in Europe, Asia, even in the Middle East. And so the co-op program tries to give a vast amount of experiences, especially a large amount of tech companies like Google, like Amazon, like Apple. They do recruit heavily from UBC, and myself and I know a lot of other people have had interviews with these large American companies. So I'd say that if that is your goal, UBC co-op program is an excellent option to get your foot in the door with some of these large companies.
Awesome. And so you kind of answered my next question as well. Where do students work? Would you say it is mostly in Vancouver, or would you say that there's a lot of international opportunities or throughout Canada as well?
So I would say a majority of students do work in Vancouver or the BC area, but I also really like to say that the co-op program is what you make of it. If you want to go over and maybe work in Europe, it is totally possible, and you could talk with your peer advisor, and they could come up with a game plan with you to help you eventually get that. So don't feel like you're limited by just Vancouver by being in UBC's co-op program. If you want to work in a certain location, the co-op office is very supportive and makes sure that we can help you achieve your goals and dreams.
Awesome. Thank you. That sounds amazing. And I know that we've had a few more students log in the last few minutes. So for those of you just joining in, welcome. And on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, you should see a purple tab. In that tab, you can click on it and see the chat bubble where you can ask questions in the chat. So make sure that you're posting your questions in there if you have any questions for us about co-op today. So the next question comes in from Peter. So asking about, are the co-ops assessed in any way? How do they contribute to your grades? Kyra, do you want to answer that about kind of what co-op means for your transcript?
So with each work term, it's just a pass or fail grade for co-op in terms of your transcript. However, during your work term, you are expected to be completing co-op assignments. There's one per work term, which is a set assignment based on your work term schedule from the co-op office. And you also get evaluated by your supervisors and your co-op coordinators along the way, so that you're getting feedback that you can use towards your professional growth in the future. But in terms of your overall grades, co-op doesn't impact it in terms of an average, and it's just pass or fail.
Awesome, thanks. And Cheyenne, I have a question for you. So even though co-op doesn't necessarily impact your grades, do you think that what you've learned on your co-op terms has affected what you've learned in the classroom and has maybe helped with some of your academics?
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of what you learn in the classroom, it's neat to relate that to what you see out in the field. So if you go on co-op fairly early, like after your second year type of thing, you'll probably learn about a lot of the processes in the field before you learn about it in the classroom. So when you come back, you can actually see them in the classroom, and as they're getting taught, you like have that image. You're like, okay, I get why this is the way it is, and so it definitely helps benefit in that way. And I know for me, like in our last year, we had a lot of design projects. So like having that industry experience and understanding how things work, it really helps when you start designing things. So I found, for me anyway, it helped a lot.
Thanks. So the next question comes in from Shrutika. So do students usually complete all their terms with one company or work with different ones? Also, how are the work/school terms interspaced? Anwar, can you help answer that question?
Yeah, definitely. So it really depends on what you want. So some students do all of their work terms with one single company to just find an amazing fit there and they love their work. But a lot of students like to take a variety and like to explore new industries, new companies to really find what they like. When it comes to spacing out your work term, you really do get a lot of flexibility. Both the co-op office as well as the engineering program tries to be as flexible as they can. So an example is for myself, I took a complete year of school to do different co-ops and then returned to finish up my academics. But I know some people might do one school term, then one co-op term, another school term. So it really is up to you, and what you feel is best reflects how you want to handle this. So there's a ton of flexibility in how many companies you can work for and how you want to separate work and school.
Awesome, thanks. And I do know if you go to the co-op website that it does show some sample schedules for all of the different programs that you might be in engineering. So you can always have a look there and see what your program, so biomedical engineering will be different than mechanical engineering, for example, and you can look at what your in school terms look like versus when your work terms are kind of scheduled to be. But like Anwar just said, that can change depending on your needs as well. So the next question comes in from Elizabeth asking, if you're not in the co-op program but find jobs on your own, can you still get the co-op designation on your degree? Kyra, do you think you could help with answering this question?
For sure. So to get the co-op designation on your degree, you do need to be a co-op student. So if you aren't a co-op student, you are able to find those jobs on your own, but you just won't get that designation. There are some companies out there, though, that require students to be in a certified or designated co-op program to hire that student. So that's something that you might want to consider on whether or not you want to join the co-op program or not.
Awesome, thanks. And if you're in the co-op program, you can still seek out your own jobs though, right? Yeah, perfect. Alexander has a question. So if you don't get accepted into co-op in second year, is it still possible to apply in third and fourth year? So it is possible to apply again in third year, but I don't think you can apply in fourth year. Is that right?
So my understanding is that co-op students are required to end with an academic term prior to graduation. So I don't believe you can apply in your fourth year.
Perfect, thanks. And Birkin asks, in which year were you advised to start taking co-op programs? So I think we've answered that already, but most students will apply to the co-op program at the start of their second year. And for most students, their first work term will be the summer after their second year of school. Carolina asks, is there a smaller selection of co-op placements in biomedical engineering or Chibi engineering because they are newer fields? Cheyenne, do you want to answer this question because you're in the...
Yeah, for sure. So it really depends on the year and stuff. Biomedical engineering is a newer department at UBC, but we do have biomed options both in our electrical and mechanical programs, so we're familiar with a lot of those biomedical companies to begin with. But like, there's probably a few less jobs, yes, in the biomedical field than the chemical engineering field, because the chemical engineering field is like 10 industries in one, right? So like biomedical is just more specialized, so you'd have a fewer jobs, but there is like definitely jobs in every one of our disciplines, even with manufacturing, which is one of our newest department. We have some manufacturing jobs as well. So
perfect. And Ethan asked a question, how do you continue with classes if you are in the States and overseas to do your co-op? So we had mentioned that during your work term, you are not actually taking classes. You are doing assignments that are part of co-op, but it's not actual classes. Did anyone want to elaborate on that, or?
I can maybe just like add a little bit to that. Like you said, you normally do kind of just focus on classes, or when you're at co-op, you focus on your work. It is possible to maybe take some evening classes or classes on the weekend if they're offered in your program and if your employer is okay with it. Or as well, you might be able to take an online class. So even when you're in co-op, you can still try to keep up with some of your studies, but normally the co-op program does elongate your degree by an extra year, but it is a very worthwhile year.
Perfect, thank you. And so Elizabeth asked, what % of engineering students are in the co-op program? I believe it's just under half of our students. Is that what you know? Yes?
That sounds about right.
Okay, perfect. So again, if you have other questions, we have a few more minutes today for our session, so please keep asking those questions. I think I've answered all of them that were posted, so if I missed yours, please just repost it into the chat session and keep asking those questions because we do have a few more minutes. So Ella just posted a question, if I was in engineering physics and in the co-op program, would my program last 6 years? So engineering physics is actually a little bit of an anomaly because it is part of the science co-op program. And so they're a little bit different. For engineering physics, co-op is basically built into the degree. So it is a 5-year program, but that includes co-op work terms as part of that. So you would not be extending it to 6 years. It would still be 5 years. But that's a great question. Harry asks, are there any reasons not to do co-op? Does anyone want to answer that?
Yeah, I can answer that. So some people who are in engineering know what they want to do. They want to be on with this company and they already have a contact in that company kind of thing. So rather than get experience elsewhere, they might just be set, this is their goal for life. And so engineering might not be for them. Similar, if like some students think that they can find these jobs outside of the co-op program, if you're like really good at networking and outgoing and successful that way, then you might not need the co-op program to help you get that experience.
Great. And yeah, I know that there's other students that might have other things lined up for their summer that are doing international opportunities and things like that. And if you already have those kind of things in place, maybe you only are doing 1 or 2 kind of summers of work as part of like throughout your degree and you have other things going on, that's totally okay too. This is a great opportunity for students who are interested, but it's not something that everyone needs to be a part of. So it's really up to you, but it's just one of the many opportunities that we do have available for our students. And I think it is a really great program if you're looking for that work experience for sure. So Ethan asks, are there any engineering fields incompatible with the co-op program? I'm not sure. Anyone had any experience with this?
I'm guessing incompatible means that like there might not be many jobs with it, and I would say like every engineering field, there's definitely a lot of opportunity, a lot of great opportunities for co-op in each one. I can't think of any field where I would say that yeah, co-op's not worth it. I think it's fruitful in every engineering you can go to.
Yeah, I've heard kind of the same thing that especially any of our programs. I mean, we have co-op advisors that are literally set up to work with each of our programs. So any of our programs that you're in, you'll be able to find a job in. I don't know if there's some niche areas that I've never heard of that maybe are more difficult, but for sure any of our programs that we offer at UBC, there will be co-op opportunities related to those. Janelle has asked, are there co-op opportunities at Tesla? And I think we already mentioned that. So yes, there definitely are co-op opportunities at Tesla. Other companies that hire our students include Google, Amazon, Apple. So lots of other really big US tech companies definitely hire our co-op students. Mary asks, if you're in co-op and you don't live in the area your co-op program is housing or living quarters assigned or taken care of, or is that up to the individual? I'm pretty sure that's up to the individual. Anwar, you went away for at least one of your co-ops. Do you want to mention what that was like?
Yeah, I can. So I think it really depends on the company, but a lot of companies, especially ones in the States and large companies, they do have corporate housing for co-op students. So in my experience, when I was moving down to the States, my company had actually already had an apartment ready for me with other co-op students. So I was able to live around other co-op students. We had a bit of a community. So a lot of companies try to be as understanding and help you out. If they do not give you apartment or housing, what they might also do is giving you a housing stipend, so they can give you a flat amount for you to find your own place. But it's very rare for a company not to do anything for you or help you in the process of finding a house, because of course relocation can be very difficult and a lot of companies understand that. So I wouldn't worry too much about that if you decide to do your co-op outside of the Vancouver area.
Great. So UBC itself won't necessarily help you find that housing, but the companies for sure will, or you'd be doing it on your own. So it's up to you, and it's up to talking to the company that you might be working for sure. So Julian asks, would being in co-op mean I'm paying for 4 years of school or 5? So while it does extend your degree by about a year to do co-op, while you're on co-op, you're paying the co-op fees itself and not your full tuition. So it does look a little bit different. One of the great things about co-op, though, is that you get paid really well during your work terms. So you're making a lot of money on top of that. So you're not paying for a full 5 years of school of full tuition fees. On those work terms, you are paying a co-op fee, but you are getting paid really well at the same time. And so let me just pull up. I have some of our stats from co-op. So a lot of our students in their starting position are making somewhere around $3,000 a month on average. So in their junior term, that would be their first or second work term. And once they get to their senior work term, which would be one of their last work terms, they're making closer to upwards to $4,000 a month in their work term. So that's just kind of some of the average salaries that can be more or less than that depending on the program and on where you're working and all those sorts of things, but just so that you have some kind of general stats of what that looks like. So I think that answered Birkin's question as well. Peter asks, I heard the co-op program can include non-work experience such as volunteering or personal projects. How true is this? So I know that you can use one of your coordinated international experience terms. So that is a term where you can go abroad to take some engineering courses towards your degree, and that can count towards one of your co-op work terms. Is there any other non-work experience that you know of that would go towards co-op?
From my understanding, it has to be work experience. I know there's some schools that have mandatory co-op programs, and I think this is what Peter is pulling from, where they're allowed to use personal projects. But for our co-op program, it has to be work experience, with the exception of the example you just gave.
Perfect, thanks. Ella asked, how long is each co-op term and when would the first one be? So we already mentioned the first one is usually in the summer after second year of school. Most of the co-op terms are generally about 4 months, but they can be longer than that. Kyra, do you want to elaborate on that piece at all?
Yeah, for sure. So, like you said, each co-op term is usually 4 months. However, depending on your sequence, you're allowed to do, say, maybe 2 work terms back to back, or you could even do all of your work terms consecutively, as long as you're finishing off with an academic term before you graduate.
Perfect, thanks. And Shrutika asks, can students do co-op and also participate in an engineering study abroad? So I think we just asked that. So you can do co-op, you can also do what we have called the coordinated international experience, and that can actually count towards one of your work terms. Other than that, we have some great programs like Go Global and some international service learning courses as well, where you do some in-course work and then you go abroad as part of that as well. Those would not be part of the co-op program per se, but they could be something that you work into your degree. It would just look at how your schedule is going to look with those work terms and with those school terms as well. And Ishan has a question, how hard is it to get into co-op? Is the application process difficult, and is there competitiveness, or is it fairly simple and easy to get into? So we kind of answered this at the beginning already, that there is an application. Generally, we're looking for good communication skills, that you're showing that you are professional and that you're also meeting the minimum GPA criteria to get in. Is there other processes that students have to go through? Do they have to interview to get into the co-op program or anything like that?
There is a group interview process, and I'd say for a lot of students, the advice is if you really want to get in a co-op program, to take the whole application process seriously, make sure you act professionally, and you really try to put your best foot forward. We see that a lot of students who don't get into co-op are ones who might have not been as professional in the interview, might have not handed in assignments when they were supposed to, might have maybe just did the assignments last minute instead of putting some thought into them. So I'd say that although it's not the most competitive program to get into, we definitely want students to take it seriously.
Perfect, thank you. So Shazil asks, if we want to graduate in 4th year, which co-op terms should we take? So if you are doing the co-op program, it will extend your degree by a year. So you would actually be doing 5 years. If you want to get in and graduate in just 4 years, then I'd recommend probably not doing the co-op program, but you wouldn't have that great work experience as part of the co-op program. So it's up to you what you're looking for. sometimes getting in and just going straight through is better for students, or maybe you want to get involved in other things, and that's totally okay too. Co-op is not mandatory, so it's an option that's available to you if you'd like. And I'm going to go to our last two questions now. Can you do extra co-op terms or stay with the company for longer? Kara, do you know if you can do extra co-op terms?
Yeah, for sure. I know of some people who've added co-op terms to their schedule. That's perfectly fine. The coordinators are usually there to help you figure out your schedule and make sure that you're not messing up your program and your full graduation date by too long. And as long as you're ending with the like the required academic term before you graduate, you're good. I believe the maximum co-op work terms is 7, but that's something I would check on the co-op website.
Perfect. And that might even change. So for those of you coming in 4 or 5 years from now, that could even look different. So definitely check with your co-op advisor when you get to that point. The other thing is, I know I've heard a lot of students that are working with a co-op company and then they get an offer for once they do graduate that they can go back and work there. So you could potentially work with that company forever if they really like you. And that's one of the great things about co-op as well, is that you get that exposure to network with different people, or maybe you even meet someone from another company on your co-op term where you get to talk about their company, and maybe that summer that you want to go after you graduate. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity open to students for that. And the last question that came up was, how much is the co-op fee per term? Does anyone know what that is? I don't have it off the top of my head.
I think it's like $750. It changes per semester, but I think that's roughly what it is.
Yeah, roughly. I think that's roughly what it is too. So somewhere in that range. Perfect. So that is all that we have time for today. Before we sign off, if there is anything that you each want to kind of give either as a piece of advice to our students that have tuned in today, or anything else that you want to mention about co-op, I'll let you do that. Cheyenne, did you have anything?
Honestly, thanks for listening, and I definitely recommend the co-op program. It's been hugely successful for me, and I got a job out of it after school, so like Kyra can say the same.
Perfect. And Kyra, so anything else to add to that?
Yeah, definitely. If you have the chance, take it. Do the co-op program. It's definitely a great way to get exposure to the industry and to build on the skills that you're learning in class. What you're learning in a classroom setting is really different from what's out there, and being able to do that before you graduate is really helpful. And I was one of the lucky students that got a job from the co-op program before I even started my last year. So you never know what's going to happen if you keep an open mind.
Awesome. And Anwar, anything else to wrap up?
Yeah, so I know some people aren't really huge fans of extending their degree by a year, but I have to say that the co-op program has been one of the best parts of my degree at UBC Engineering, and it can really give yourself a great upward trajectory for your whole career by doing the co-op. So really highly recommend it for everyone. And yeah, thank you so much for listening, and welcome to UBC.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We have recorded this session, so we will be posting it to the Facebook group. It does take a day or two for that whole process to happen, so please bear with me. If you have additional questions that either weren't answered today, or you think of more questions about things other than co-op or even about co-op, please feel free to post those questions in the Facebook group. There are current students there. I check that page all the time too, so I can answer any of your questions that you want to post in there. We will be having another Collaborate Ultra session coming up with some students about choosing your second year program in the last week of April. So keep an eye on Facebook for the link and the date and time for that session, but you can look forward to that coming up. And thank you everyone so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your evening. And like I said, post those questions in the Facebook group because that's really the best place to get them answered. So thank you everyone. Have a great evening, and I hope to see you on Facebook sometime.